Hey gang, Professor Feeser here. I provide education solutions for large groups and organizations. If you're searching for a learning pathway for your team or enterprise, feel free to reach out. My contact info is at the end of the video. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about Ansible Rulebook. Ansible Rulebook is a triggering system for an Ansible playbook. And if you're looking to learn more about Event Driven Ansible, well, Event Driven Ansible is ultimately the domain that AAP creates for you to run rulebooks. So you really can't understand EDA without first understanding what a rulebook is. I'm here on the documentation page for Ansible Rulebook. Effectively, if you read through this, they're going to explain that a rulebook has three main parts. It has sources, event sources. So if we scroll down here, probably the most popular source or the easiest one to recognize would be webhook events. So what this says is when an HTTP message arrives at Ansible Rulebook, go ahead and parse it out. Look at it. We don't want to trigger just because we got an HTTP message. We want to apply rules. We want to apply conditionals to it to decide, is this an HTTP message worth running a playbook against? And furthermore, maybe which playbook should we run against it based on criteria contained within that HTTP message. So there's sources, and there's a couple major sources off the top of my head: webhooks, Prometheus, file watch, so watch a file structure, see if it changes, AMQP, RabbitMQ, two or three other big ones for you. There's addition to sources. I said there's going to be rules, right? So a rule contains a condition and an action. So the condition is the criteria by which we're going to scan the source. So for example, if an HTTP message hits us, we might want to parse out the attachment and say, does the JSON contain the following word? Are we seeing the word critical? Are we seeing the word storage? Are we seeing the word warning? We then can apply an action based off of the condition if it's true. And the idea here is, we don't want to just receive an HTTP message and, wow, we got a webhook, let's run a playbook. We want to be able to receive an HTTP message and on the server side, on the receiving side, apply some criteria by which we decide, is this worth running a playbook? And furthermore, which playbook do we run? So I think the best thing to do is just show you an example of how this is going to work. So I'm going to start off by creating a little place to work just called EDA Lab. Now, this is Ansible Rulebook. We're going to build up to Event Driven Ansible. But right now, we're focusing on Rulebook so we can relate what we're learning to ultimately EDA. Next, I'm going to create an inventory very similar to the way Ansible Playbook works. In this case, just a local host is defined. Next, I'm going to make sure pip is upgraded. No big deal there. After that, I'm going to make sure that both Ansible, so Ansible Core, and Ansible Rulebook, two separate software packages, are installed. As soon as they come in, I then have to make sure two collections are installed. One is called Ansible EDA, and the other one is Community General. I believe Ansible EDA has the source plugins in it, along with other consumables that the rulebooks ultimately use. There's kind of a gotcha with this Ansible rulebook thing. You have to install Java. It's kind of bizarre. It definitely isn't the way we think about Ansible. I mean, we describe Ansible as a Python framework. They claim they need this for a couple of the plugins to be able to receive different sources specifically. I haven't drilled into it much more than just it's got to be there. The proof of that is when we run an Ansible rulebook version. I mean, they absolutely have made it clear, oh yeah, there's going to be not only a dependency on Python, but also a Java dependency that shows up as well. I'm going to create a playbook folder in the EDA folder. And in that playbook folder, I'm going to create a playbook called Notify. And we can modify this just a little bit. My starting off playbook is localhost, gather facts false. Vars, I have an incoming Ansible EDA event. If for some reason this playbook was triggered, the Ansible EDA event is mapped to default. Here I try to print out incoming. It's kind of redundant since incoming is actually mapped to Ansible EDA event to say if it's not defined, then display NA. But here I suppose I could understand that incoming.meta.source wouldn't exist if that was an empty dictionary. So I'm going to say default NA, incoming payload message. Again, if those sub or children don't exist, then probably want to print no message there rather than risk getting an error. So there's 4 lines that are printed out. We might come back to this, but for right now, let's keep going. Next thing I'm going to do is create a rulebook directory. And in that rulebook, I'm going to create a rulebook called webhook rulebook. Into that, I'm going to describe the source and the rules, and within the rules, the conditions and actions that I want to take. Runs on localhost. I want to bind to all IP addresses and focus on port 5000. It's possible to define that webhook. Hey, I'm listening for this HTTP post. Webhooks are posts. I'm listening for this HTTP post. You can tell it, I want to make sure that there's a header in that post that has the following token, just to make things a little more secure. For purposes of testing, I took that out of there. Rules, how do we want to check this HTTP message? Condition, event payload message is defined. Okay? Event payload message is defined. And event payload message is equal to restart. Let's go check out our rulebook real quick. Our playbook. Ansible EDA event is going to be whatever is passed from the rulebook. So the event itself, whatever is received, is going to be passed into our playbook here. In this case, the only way we're triggering that playbook is if our webhook has truly attached to the post is a key called message, and that message is mapped to the word restart. What do we want to do? Run that playbook notify. We just looked at it. We just created it. Now here's something interesting, extra vars. We're going to pass in an extra vars that says rule restart handler. It could say anything. If you're going, what's restart handler? I don't know. It's whatever I decided. We're going to pretend an HTTP post came in and attached to it somehow has an indication that we need a restart, right? If we want to make this rule something really stand out, I could make it Professor Feeser. And how about please trigger the restart handler playbook can be what we passed in. So let's go back to our playbook here. Up here I have a debug, Ansible built-in debug. Let's go ahead and grab that. And let's put down here, not the event payload, show the extra var passed in. So this won't be a message, it'll just be var, and it'll be the Professor Feeser variable that we just passed. Okay? That variable will be defined. Professor Feeser will be defined by this right here. That extra var is getting passed into that playbook when this rule is found to be true. That condition is found to be true. My next one. So if this isn't the case, then we fall through to this possible condition. Event payload message is just defined. It's not defined with the word restart. There's just something in there. What do we want to do? Well, we don't want to have rule. These should match Professor Feeser. If we're going to call the same playbook, we've got to pass the same extra variable for it to really be effective. And we'll put here, please trigger the generic playbook. So, gang, understand, what does that mean? It's whatever sort of story you want to concoct for yourself. Like I said up here, let's pretend that we get some HTTP message coming in and we know, uh-oh, we got to bounce a service to keep, put a fire out. Down here, it's whatever, some other HTTP message comes in. Maybe this is just post to Slack or something like that. It's whatever you want to imagine the generic playbook does. We could look at the playbook just one more time, right? Whatever ultimately the post says is going to be defined to incoming. We're going to display different parts of incoming in the playbook, showing that the rulebook can transfer data to the playbook. We're also going to show data from the post, right, from this webhook. We're also going to show that an extra variable can be passed into the playbook from the rulebook as well. Let's go ahead and run that. Ansible rulebook, inventory any, rulebook, rulebooks, webhook, rulebook, print events, and verbose. This is going to kick off the server. It ingests our rulebook, and it's actually listening on port 5000 right now. So what I'll do is split the screen here, and I'm going to build an HTTP post. curl-h. As soon as you say curl and then mention -d, which means an attachment, here's the JSON I'm attaching, it assumes a post. So send a post with the following header, content type application JSON, attach to it this JSON, message restart, and there we'll do port 5000 / endpoint. Endpoint is what rulebook listens on. You just have to append that on there. So fire that off. It received it. Boom. Playbook ran. Let's give ourselves a little more screen real estate, eh? And let's scroll up just a tad. This is the rulebook receiving the event. So the rulebook said, hey, you know what? I received this webhook, this HTTP post, and the payload says message restart. I'm supposed to run the playbook, notify because of that. So we get here, EDA received an event, right? If we look, there's the webhook data. That's everything that came in from the rulebook. Source info, that's everything about where it came from. That's just source info is a child of this data point up here. Furthermore, there is right there source info in the parent. And then the webhook message sent, that's the extra, that's not the extra variable. That's just message was mapped to the word restart. There's the extra variable passed in. Professor Feeser, please trigger the restart handler playbook. So all we're showing is we can have very dynamic type response to any sort of webhook event. We could prove that by firing off a, here we have the only difference is message is now pizza time. Well, our restart condition won't be matched, but the second condition will. The second condition just says the word message just needs defined. So this time we'll see a playbook run, but it'll say generic playbook. Please trigger the generic playbook. Okay. Now, what would be really cool is if we could send a webhook, but not make anything run. The webhook will be received, but it won't trigger a playbook because it doesn't meet any conditions. So we'll change message to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, say pizza time. That's not a rule, right? Our rules say it has to be message, and it has to either be defined or defined as restart. So webhook received, no playbook running. Okay, gang, that was a quick 5,000-foot view of rulebook. In our next video, we're going to take what we learned in rulebook and we're going to apply it to Ansible Automation Platform. So AAP has this domain called EDA, Event Driven Ansible, and it's effectively everything we just studied, but with a GUI wrapper around it. So this is the foundational knowledge. You're going to want to see video part 2, and to do so, hit like on this video, hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next episode of Code with Feeser.